So the big thing I announced to everyone was inspiring people and inspiring youth. Over the last couple of weeks, people have been mailing us and they've been sending us submissions and nominations for people that they felt or feel inspire other people in different ways, in different levels, and on different levels. And so I decided to chat to Yaseen Kippie. I'm not 100% sure if I pronounce his name properly, but that's fine, I'm going to find out soon. And he says it's perfect. But what we want to talk about is youth specifically, and where he finds himself within that space. And I think that's where would be a good starting point. What I found out in the last couple of minutes spending with him is that he's a very deep individual for 19 years old, going to be 20 soon. Yaseen, welcome to the show.
Jazakumullah khair for having me.
Now, we had a brief chat before we started the show, and I see you on my Facebook now and then, but never thought that, or one doesn't sort of think when you're on Facebook that there's a lot of substance behind, especially with Facebook. I tend to take it serious to a certain degree, and then I'm not 100% sure if I'm speaking to anyone real, or if it's somebody that's just a robot. Sometimes I'm not sure. But now when we sat for 10 or 15 minutes, for a young man, you're very deep in your understanding, your logic, and the way that you see the world, and the way you think that the world should be at this stage. Where did all that start? Because it's very deep.
Yeah, well, I think one of the pitfalls of the modern society or modern man is that he likes to portray himself other than he actually is. That has always been there, but I think because of the selfie civilization that we live in fact the child civilization that we live in, this is really one of the biggest problems that we face. Facebook is one of the greatest fitness that you could have, but it could also be one of the biggest blessings that we could have. And I like to use the metaphor of it being a double-edged sword. How do you handle it? Because you could put something about your day there, and someone could read it and feel so depressed about their lives. Or you could put something, an inspiring quote that you learned for that day, and someone could feel so much better about the depressing life that they have. And so this is what we need to be doing with the means of communication that we have in the modern age. One of the problems that I see within the youth especially, and the reason why I've taken this perspective in life, is that we've inverted reality in and of itself. They call it تلبس الحق بالباطل والباطل بالحق, the disguise of truth as falsehood and falsehood as truth. And so this transcends not only in our social engagement, but also really in our intellectual institutions that we find. And that is the basis of everything. If you want to disrupt a whole civilization, where do we start? With the youth. That is what Genghis Khan did. I mean, he uprooted that whole civilization through force. But after that, and in so many other civilizations, they reconstruct the educational process that the youth go through. And this is what I see. We are faced with music as a problem, with in terms of the misplacement of that love that you have for the divine into types of music that talk about sex, that talk about drugs, and that is a big problem. Drugs is another problem. Or alcohol is a massive problem that not only Muslims have, non-Muslims have. I mean, not only non-Muslims, Muslims have that as well. But some of the most wonderful Muslims I know who try their utmost in terms of spirituality to connect to Allah have a drinking problem.
For 1 minute, I just want to understand you as a person. Okay. Because I'm inspired, and I want our viewers to be inspired by the fact that you are 19 years old and you have a very deep understanding. Most youth your age, and I'm not saying all, but many of them are still busy either in the clubs, on drugs, finding their space in this world, trying to understand their existence, depression, drinking, sexual activity. So they're involved with a myriad of things other than what they're supposed to be involved with. So you appear to have taken a conscious decision at some point in your life to get onto that path very early in your life, and I see that coming through. Why?
Well, I think the root cause for all these problems that we have, the youth that they face, is that we blame society. But we are society, you see. So
what made you as Yaseen.
I realized that at a very young age, that the only reason I'm a Muslim is because my parents are Muslim. If I was born in some village in India, I might be Hindu, or in China, I might be Buddhist or Tao or something, So I realized that, and why should I be Muslim because my parents are Muslim? I should be Muslim because I believe in it, And the problem is that we do things that we don't believe in. Donald Trump, he changes his politics every day because he doesn't believe in it, He doesn't believe that Muslims are bad, I think he just says so because it's going to get him more votes with the already bigotry and all of these other isms that exist in that world. For me, I saw that as a problem, that why am I Muslim? Who am I? And that's really a question that everyone asks themselves. Who am I? This existential question. And when I thought about that, many people answer, I'm a Muslim. But that's, for me, that's an added label to who you already are. Because if you're looking for identity in Islam, you're going to find so many. Sufism, Sufi, Salafi, Wahhabi, Shafi'i, Shi'i, all of that. So what is my identity? It's not that I'm a Muslim. Islam is not simply an identity, it's a way of being. But I found that I'm a soul living a bodily experience, and all of these things are not who I am in my essence. It's peripheral to who I actually am. And I saw that all these people that are facing the problems, because I'm very much affected by what I see out there, and people my age, they're faced with these problems when they were 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, and I saw that you are putting that in direct correlation of who you are. No, you are a soul, and that is something that is trying to change your perspective on that. You know what I mean? And so if you were to reorientate yourself to understanding that what we really are souls, and all of these challenges are trying to really change who you are, then you can actually see things for what they are. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but one of the poets, he said, إِنَّمَا الْكَوْنُ مَعَانِي قَائِمَةً بِالصُّوَرِ كُلُّ مَنْ يُدْرِكْ هَذَا كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْعِبَارِ. That the entire universe are meanings set up in images, and all those who can perceive these meanings are people of inner core. And if I'm a body, but my inner core is my soul. And so I think if we go back to basics, what are our points of departure? That is what led me to this. And the very basic question that I asked, very important question that I asked, is who am I? How can reality be as it is? And I had an existential crisis at the young age.
Now, that's something that you mentioned early on to me before the show, and you saw it as an existential crisis. Yes. But many people your age would not consider themselves to having an existential crisis. Many people do have existential crisis, but they're not able to identify that. How did you identify that?
Well, the first thing that tells you to go to a doctor is what? Pain, isn't it so? And I think pain is a very good gift that we have. And for me, the disquietude in my soul overlapped into my body. And I felt this physical jittery that every time I thought about who am I? How can I, what is this hand? You know what I mean? How can I speak to you? That made me feel like I'm in a different zone. You know, like this
You might just be an actor in a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm in a fish pond, like in a fish bowl. I asked all these questions until I would lay in the grass in my yard. What is happening? And the way I came to realize.
I find that amazing.
And if you don't believe in Allah, then just look at the massive cosmos and universe you have out there. You're limited. Your knowledge is based on empirical evidence. But what Islam provides me, and that's what I'm trying to tell you, that it's not simply about going on about merry and happy and all these things. It's about asking yourself, who am I? And what has affected me to this point that has made me like this? What is the solution? Because the greatest of scholars are not those who can just say, this is the problem, music is a problem, drinking is a problem. It's about those who can يتحلل ويتعقد. It's أهل الحل والعقد. Those who can say, this is the problem, but there's a solution to this. To place the text within context. And Islam, and I was fortunate to meet very influential and people that really affected my life positive way that had led me to the solution that I mentioned earlier. People like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, people like Sheikh Siraj Hendricks, Sheikh Ahmed Hendricks, Sheikh Ali Khalfi, who we have started recording with as well. People international, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Aran. All of these people influenced me from a distance, and that's why I'm saying the internet's a very, I don't know how to explain it.
It depends what you use it for.
Yeah.
Like people are using things for the right reasons and using them for the wrong reasons.
And so for me, that was really, a disquietude in myself.
So you detail, and we know, and I don't think that we need to go into the aspects of what the issues is with the current youth. Now, South Africa, and if I stand corrected, I'm not sure about this, but I think the government sees youth up to the age of 35 in South Africa.
Okay.
I think our perception of youth is slightly younger, so we're thinking about people that are 10 years old and perhaps up to 25, 30. Not even 30. By 30, I assume people are starting to level out in what they're doing. But let's talk about this age, 15 years old till 25. Let's talk about them. You fall right in the center of that.
Yeah.
Right, so you're quite experienced in that. But let's talk about them. They have social media. They, as I said on the show just before this, they've reduced their physical activity in terms of sport and recreation because they're now involved with their devices all day, and that's the iPads and whatever it might be. I'm not talking about Apple, but all the little devices. So we find all of that happening. And they are now more connected with things happening in worlds outside their world, and that might be sexual activities and stuff like that. So you see this chaos going on inside there. We know it. So let's not describe the problem further. We understand the problem. In your view, looking at it from the epiphanies that you've been having in your life, and that's the way I see them, what do you think the solutions are?
Okay.
I don't know, it's a very broad answer, but I'm asking this question from somebody that's got a level head sitting inside the youth camp. Yeah. What do you think the solutions are?
Well, I mean, like you said, from 15 to 25, I would extend that to like 75, because there's so many junk adults out there. You know what I mean? Because it's a child civilization, like I said. Either you're childlike or you're childish. Childlike is a very positive quality. When my little I have a niece and when my cousins' children come to play, I run to play with them because I feel like they have this innocence, untainted by the and this world can defile you, untainted by that. But we have many the tyrant infant, a childish version of this being portrayed within so many junk adults out there. Here's the consumer adult. I just want to buy this thing, you know what I mean? Just one nightmare after the next. Mecca was for 13 years. There was no salah until the end of Mecca. But people like Sumayya radiallahu anha, Khadijah al-Kubra, they died for this religion at the early stages. Yet they reached darajat and levels that we can only hope for. What were their perspectives? Was theirs about halal and haram? No. It was about the spirit. And one of the first things the Prophet ﷺ said, and I think this is the solution to all the intellectual crisis, because the intellectual crisis at the root is a spiritual crisis, and it's a crisis of adab. And the definition of adab is not character, it's about wad'u shay fi mahallihi, to put the thing in its correct place. And one of the first things that the Prophet ﷺ said, Ar-Rahimun yarhamum ar-Rahman, those who show mercy will receive mercy. And the point of departure that we need to have is a merciful one, because you'll find out there the intellectual viruses that we have of people like ISIS, because this is what Islam has been reduced to. Reductionism at the highest order is that Islam is ISIS. Why do they think that way? Because not only has ISIS provided a very romanticized version of Islam, it's also been a lack of mercy. And because I'm in the middle also of this Fees Must Fall movement, and it's very difficult. It's not a black and white issue. It's very difficult to understand exactly. And I support decolonization completely. But the thing is, how do you decolonize a thing when you've lost the ethics of basic humanity.
To that subject, there was somebody that called for the decolonization of science. I don't think that's possible, but the decolonization of the other constructs from a political point of view might be possible. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, I think like she didn't call for the decolonization of science. She called for the removal of science, which is something completely alien to anything. And that's
it means that the very chair that you're sitting on, manufactured through some scientific process,
right?
You cannot sit on.
Because people think it's only, because like in my university, I'm at the University of Cape Town studying politics, philosophy and economics, right? They think it's only the humanities students that are protesting, but it's actually all the students, because they've realized that there's been a retrospective telling of the narrative of modernity. Why don't we realize that there are certain dams in South Africa through engineering processes that are being properly, millions of rands are being spent in the manufacturing of these dams, yet what are the societies that are being affected by this? Largely the black community, and the engineering students aren't told this. They aren't told the history of these places, and if you aren't informed about the past, you'll never realize and understand the fruits of that.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
So Yaseen, you spoke a little bit about what's happening at the university, and I think South Africans are following that now, and probably people around the world are starting to follow this particular story in South Africa that seems to be dismantling. Then I mentioned you sitting in the center of the youth camp, right? In the youth camp that I'm thinking about, and you speak about certain solutions that youth should be following. But when we talk about a solution for youth as from a broader perspective, let's leave religion out of that.
Okay.
Let's leave cultural groups out of this. Youth today, generally bombarded with technology and all the concerns, and then also some economic upheaval that's affecting the way they're doing things and the way they're thinking, and it's affecting depressive levels at the same time. What is the solution? What is it that youth need to do today to get themselves out of the rut that they're in? Because they are delaying their progress as a society. So you have stopped that bleed, and you said, wait, let me not act like the balance of the youth and my contemporaries, because all you're doing is you're delaying. You have stopped a bleeding process.
Stuck in the mud.
Yes, correct. So they're going to sit there stuck in the mud, as you say, for the next 10 years, and then wake up. And everyone tends to wake up. I'm 30 now. I don't need to go to the clubs anymore. Don't need to do all these things anymore. But then you've lost 10 years. Now, what is it that they need to do now to come out of the rut that they're in? And I see the youth to be in a rut. And I'm not saying everybody, but majority. Okay.
We need a revival, I think. We don't need a renewal like some modernists are calling for, because renewing and reformation is what they're calling for. If you want to reform anything for that matter, look at what has happened. Okay, I'm going to talk about religion just for a small part of this. The Christians had their reformation period. It ended up in so many bloody wars, right? Is it not so? And then they call for a reformation of Islam as well. It has happened already. ISIS is the result of that. So we don't need a reformation.
So you're saying that reformation is leading to extremist behavior in any organization?
One extreme leads to another extreme. Feminism is the result of one extreme to another extreme. We have Islamic feminism, but it's not what they're calling for, because we don't put equality on the basis of physicality. That's not what it is. That is a very modern perspective, and that's a problem. And if we agree with this template of gender arguments and that stuff, then we'll see real inequalities happen. Whereas from the religious mind, we should actually transform our perspectives to seeing really the spiritual reality of things. But coming back to this process of seeing the problem and providing a solution to that, Imam al-Ghazali, why I'm calling for a revival and renewal, he wrote a book called Ihya Ulumuddin, right? The revivification, the revival of the sciences of the deen, going back to basics. What he did was saying, wait, let's look at the perspective of what is forbidden, what is permissible in Islam, and let's not just give one narrative to that. Let's look at it as a holistical thing and see the spiritual side of that. And one of the perspectives that he gave was that the purification of the human being is a removal of the negative qualities and the adorning of positive qualities. Leave religion out of this. This juxtaposition at the same time.
You're referring to, if we're leaving religion out, we're then purely talking about humanistic aspects.
Exactly. About morality, about just human values and these things. You can't simply keep the wound from bleeding further without providing medical treatment to that. And I think the real solution to the intellectual crisis that we have is going back to basics. And what that means is going back to the instrumental sciences that were developed by people like Aristotle back in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago.
You know that this community has a problem.
Exactly.
And the problem is that if someone else has a plan and has a philosophy and ideology, and his name was Aristotle,
Yeah.
you can fit it into your plan as a Muslim.
Absolutely.
What's the problem with that?
You know, what he provided was logic, and the instrumental sciences that I think is the solution, that is definitely the solution, is logic, which is understanding and filtering out fallacies of logic. For example, one of the fallacies of logic is the problem of cause and effect. You know, many people think that because they have certain effects, that the cause must be such and such. For example, many people think Islam is an oppressive religion. Why? Because they observe Muslim societies. But from a truly logical perspective, having studied logic, I see it as the abandonment of Islam. That is the result of these things. So I asked my professors, what do you think of Islam? Oh, that's a backward religion. Oh, it's oppressive to women. Have you ever read the Quran? No. Have you ever read the Hadith? No. Then what is he basing that on? He's basing it on the very thing that he sees. Well, if we base what we see on the Christian, have we seen turn the other cheek for the past 2,000 years? Did we see that when America invaded Iraq? If we, one of the greatest tenets of the Jewish faith is love God and love thy neighbor. That's according to Rabbi Hillel, right? What was one of the greatest Jewish rabbis and authorities. Well, if we observe what's happening in Palestine, do we see that? Does that mean that the Jewish, the Torah and the Bible and the Quran are invalid as books? No. The problem is people like to apply logic on other than themselves, you know, to people other than themselves, while neglecting themselves. So we need to go back to the basics of understanding logical thought. And I bet you, with everything that I've gathered, that previous generations and civilizations had that embedded within them, but because of the crisis of modernity, but we shouldn't see it as a problem. Everything that has been a fall in the history of human beings has actually been a rise, right? When Adam and Eve, when he was sent down to earth, we shouldn't see that as a fall. We should see that as a rise for him being the representation of representative of God on earth, building a great civilization, you know, and a history. When Abraham left his wife and his son in Mecca, we shouldn't see that as a fall. We should see that as a rise of the great civilization of Islam. Likewise, modernity. We are at the perfect opportunity, because don't you ever question, why am I living in the 21st century? Why didn't I live in the 7th century Arabia? That would be much easier. You know, there's a reason, Faizal. There's a reason why we're living, and this is that we are the perfect opportunity to redressing these issues. But we have to realize that there is an issue. And we have to put our body and our soul into this as the spiritual crisis, and all of these things that what we are facing with technology, we shouldn't see it from the lenses, you know, of the devil. And that is really a very childish lens, because oh, he's better than me. Ana khayrun minhu. I'm better than him. You know, that perspective. And it's a truly spiritual crisis that we face. And leaving religion out of that, we are faced with the intellectual crisis. This is not what I am talking about. I am simply the forward button on an email that this has been discussed by thousands of people, but we need to understand that things being from Greek origin has no problem in our religion. Prophet ﷺ said, Al-hikmah dalatul mu'min, that wisdom is the lost riding beast of the believer. Wherever he finds it, he's actually more, deserving of it. So we should do this. And Imam Ghazali and all these great scholars, they filtered out all the polytheistic viewpoints in order to understand this from a truly Islamic perspective. And this is what we need in our lives, and this is what we need not only to enrich our civilization and our society, but to truly enrich ourselves, because that is really, we are faced with psychological, and you know this because you're doing PhD in psychology, am I right? We are faced with these real problems on a human level, and we need to redress this. And what do they say? An intelligent person wants to change the world. Truly wise person changes themselves so that the world can be changed.
But for the very first time, I'm sitting and listening to an inspiring young man that has so much information, deep knowledge and understanding of this world. So you truly are an inspiring individual. Yes, and thank you for coming into the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Faizal.
Now, I wish that all our youth can sound like that, but I think the world is going to have a problem if everyone sounds like Yaseen. We're going to have intellectual debates every day. But I think that's what we probably need going forward. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.